Here, I'm sharing it to you on WhatsApp. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I just sent it.
Cool, cool. It's gonna be kind of rough to. Well, I guess the person could type it in.
No,
Probably.
you can't link it.
Nah, I don't. You have to have a certain what you call account. You have to have like the big time account
I
in
got
order to do that, like to swipe it up.
And I'm just letting you know we are live, so
Yep.
we're live in the stratosphere,
No problem.
in the interweb.
Mm-hmm. No problem. So how's everything, man?
Can't complain, bro. I cannot complain, brother. You know.
Mm-hmm. Uh, cool.
So let me know when you're ready, and then we're gonna hit this up.
Yep. Yep. I'm ready. Yep.
All right, cool. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Wallaway. I'm here with a very good and dear friend of mine, Sulaiman Jenkins. Sulaiman, how are you?
Yes. How you doing, bro? How's everything? Good.
I'm doing good, man. How you been?
Good. Alhamdulillah. Just on lockdown, trying to survive like the whole rest of the world.
What's how's your family been?
Everyone's good, man. Can't complain. Can't complain.
So just to give a quick introduction to everybody today, we're going to be discussing Sulaiman has written a book for Mutah Beale, formerly known as Napoleon of the Outlaws, who used to rap with Tupac. And the title of the book is Life is Raw. And we can get into the title in a little bit in terms of why Raw was spelled backwards. I did listen to it in another interview, very interesting.
Yeah.
Sulaiman Jenkins is a published. What would the proper terminology be? Published author? What's the phrase I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah. Authors at the book level, a published academic.
Published academic in the field of linguistics, TESOL, very serious instructor, very serious person, one of the most serious people that I've met in terms of his rigor, his work ethic, how he approaches work, how he approaches life in general. So I'm very excited to have you on here today, man, to talk about your latest project. And you've done so many things. Um, so before we get into the actual work,
Mm-hmm.
give me a quick bio of you, man. What's your background in this whole thing in terms of why were you interested in working on such a book, and how did your own story factor into approaching Mutah and wanting to write this book?
Well, again, Mutah and I, we go back a long ways till about 2008 when we first met. I was a big fan of his growing up. You know what I mean? So it was cool for me to meet him. Finally as a brother in Islam. Um, but we just basically had a regular relationship. There wasn't anything really professionally involved or business involved, things like that. And then we became closer as around 2015. We had some business dealings. I became a partner in his clothing company, 33. Um, and, we became, like I said, closer. And he released a documentary last year um, on his life. And it was, amazing documentary. And it got positive reviews. And on his IG, someone had tapped down at the bottom on a comment. They said, we're just waiting for your book to come out. And so um, when I saw that, I said, well, time out. I'm a writer. I'm an author. I've been fortunate to publish a number of articles in high-ranking journals, things like that. So I said, "What's up? Let's get it cracking. Why don't I take a stab at your book?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." He said he had one done before, a few years ago, but it really wasn't up to his standard. And it really wasn't. It really didn't. He felt like it didn't really have the spirit of or capture the spirit of what he wanted to, convey to the people. So, long story short, we talked about it, the project, and he said, yes, it sounds like a great idea. But I told him, I said, look, I'm not just going to talk about your life. There's so many things, I'm a researcher, as you mentioned, and so my whole frame of mind from the very beginning is, okay, what sorts of other things can I pull into this narrative that will be beneficial, because his life, you know, his life story happened at a time where a lot of other important things happened in American society, happened in the Black community, happened in in rap and things like that. So I said, "Can I pull all these things together?" He said, "Sure, no problem." I chefed up the first chapter, sent it to him. He's blown away, mashallah, and he's the rest is history. Yeah.
No, so before we get more into the story, I want to know a little bit more about not only your relationship with him, but just your own background in terms of, we have Coach D Lancaster here, who's
Yeah.
from New York. So tell us a
Okay.
little bit about your background, where you're hailing from, and maybe your
Oh,
connection
okay.
to
Yeah.
rap hip hop.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Brooklyn. You know what I mean. The accent is gone because I've been I'm not gone, but it's hidden just because I've been teaching English internationally for so many years. But yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, born and raised. And yeah, we grew up. I grew up in the '90s, and we grew up around Biggie and Jay-Z and Tupac and Nas and things like that. So we grew up in the golden age of gangster rap, and it was at this time that Pac, he formed Outlaws, and I grew up without my father, so for me, Pac was really influential in terms of just showing you how to be a strong Black man in a society that really doesn't, it really at times really shows you that you're not, wanted basically, and that you're
Mm.
not, there's a lot of barriers and a lot of obstacles. So he made things clearer. But what made listening to him even more compelling was that he brought these young guys called Outlaws, and they're my age, and I'm like, wow, you got these guys my age rapping with somebody like Tupac, so I really took a liking to them, when I was, when I was younger, and then also had some Puerto Rican homies who, they were really crazy dudes, and they all had bald heads, and they even had the outlaw tattoo, So
Mm.
I was that close to getting one, but that's how hard, yeah, that's how hard, we were riding for Pac in the East Coast in Brooklyn, but yeah, yep, and then
What's Go ahead.
yeah.
No, good.
No, and then I'm from the hood, but I was fortunate to go to some pretty good schools, man. So I was you could call me yeah. I mean I was fortunate to go to some great schools, man. So
So
that was going to be my ticket out of the hood. Some people do it through basketball, some people do it through rap, but mine was going to be education.
So let's focus in on that, because that's what I titled or retitled this interview, was that it's a story of transformation, right? So what I
Sure.
found very interesting, and you can give a little bit more background in terms of who Mutah is, maybe just a quick synopsis of his. He's got one of those life stories that's not very typical, right? It's not something
Mhm.
that you find in every neighborhood
Not at
necessarily,
all.
and it's very unique. So
Yep.
what I like about this title is that both of the people on the cover are supposed to be Mutah Beale, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's literally a story of reformation or transformation. And then just to
Exactly.
preface that, I was doing some research for this interview, and I read this quote from the LA Times talking
Yeah.
about when this record producer Mikhail met
Yeah.
Napoleon for the first time, and he said that
Yeah.
he had a Colt 45 in one hand, malt liquor
Yeah.
a Colt 45 malt liquor in one hand, marijuana joint in the other, and he was
Yeah.
surrounded by 15 members of his rowdy posse. And in that same
Yeah.
article, he's mentioning that uh, he knew that if he could reform Mutah or Napoleon at
Yeah.
the time,
Yeah.
that he could be a
Yeah.
great leader, because
Yep.
he had like 20 people around him. He would say, okay, go do this, go do that. And they would
Exactly.
just fall
He
in
was a
line.
general.
Yeah. And
Yep.
based on what you said earlier, in terms of
Mhm.
the Tupac thing that you guys were looking for as young
Mhm.
Black men in the East Coast, you're looking
Mhm.
for a role model or someone who's a
A
strong
leader.
figure. But I want to talk
Exactly.
about that,
Yep.
that kind of extreme, in the sense that, because when something's missing, and now the only thing that's presented is something that there's goodness in, but it's also like at the extreme levels of alpha male,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So
Sure. Sure.
just to kind of talk, what's really inspirational about Mutah is the balance. Now I see that from watching his stuff on IG and whatnot, that there
Mhm.
seems to be a balanced approach. So I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in terms of I mean, he grew up rough. He grew up. I mean, there are a lot of things that are very similar that many black males, color people of color, minorities um, face. There are a lot of similarities between how they grew up and how things that happen in Mattel's life. But I mean, his situation is unique because I have never met somebody who's gone through so much tragedy. His first, the beginning of the book and the beginning of his life. I say I basically say in the book, the opening chapter of the book. opens just like his life did, and it opens with the murder of his parents.
Mm.
They murdered, right in front of him. He's only 3 years old. His brother's 4. Um, and then he grows up in a time when crack cocaine enters America, and it comes in and it hits New Jersey the hardest, where it just happens that's where he's from, so with no guidance, from a real strong father figure, he, he just succumbs to his environment, and he starts slinging crack, and he's 9 years old, 10 years old. His brother becomes an OG at like 11, holding
Wow.
down the entire neighborhood. People afraid of him, and this is a little guy. You know what I mean? So they have, they had uh, it's a traumatic upbringing, to be surrounded by that stuff at such a young age, and these are the formative years of your life. Um, and it also is interesting that rap also came onto the scene at the same time, and he was able to find it as an outlet. So there are a lot of things that are unique to his particular story, and it just so happened that things just one thing happened led to another. He had a friend, Gaddafi, who ended up knowing Pac, and then after some time they came back together, and then he met up with Pac, and the rest is history with the Outlaws. But the thing is that one of the things that Pac was so intrigued with Mutah was just how raw he was, just how, this guy is 15 years old. He's already been through so much. And Pac was like, look, I'm taking you in, man. I got you. Don't worry about it. And that was something that was really tremendous in his life. Who knows where he would have been had Pac not done that, because he was just in the street, him and his family, his cousins, they were just in the street running wild, crazy. Um, and then, he basically just lived, life of a rapper, and all that entails. And he's had this internal, this is one of the other themes of the book is, dealing with mental health and mental
Mm.
emotional issues. I don't think he ever really recovered from not having his mother and father around. He always was angry. Yeah, so there's so many stories in the book of just outbursts of anger and things like that. And unfortunately, that anger never subsides because, I mean, rap is one way that helps him to express himself and get the anger out, but that's always complicated by some death, right?
Mm.
So he's rapping with Tupac, he's on top of the world, but then he dies.
Mm.
Tupac gets murdered, and it's not, yeah, that's not just death; he gets murdered. And then his grandmother died before that, so that was difficult because she had taken over for him when he was, when he had nobody. And then, that's like a huge root, taking up for his life. And then Pac dies, and then Gaddafi dies after that, and then his brother dies. So it's just, his life just became a whirlwind of just death, you know what I mean? And so that outlet of rap, it began to mean nothing. Life meant nothing, And so basically he came to a point where it's like, look, man, either I'm gonna kill somebody or I'm gonna be killed. And, if things proceed, in this way, then I might not be around here a bunch longer. And it was at that point that he realized something really serious had to change. He has an incident where he's with his brother in the studio, and he's, I'm not gonna get into too much because I want people to read the book. But yeah,
Yeah,
he
of course.
he gets into an altercation with his brother that's really, really bad, to happen with your own brother. And it was at that point that he realized, look, I can't continue like this, man. I'm a monster, and I gotta change, and that's what he did. Show him.
So let's focus in on the transformation, because what's interesting is that when you're accustomed to getting whatever you want, especially from a very young age, and not you're getting it, you're taking it, right? So he's probably has money, probably has fame, women, is drinking, doing
Mm-hmm.
drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Mm-hmm.
getting
Lots of drinking.
lots of drinking,
Yeah,
lots of drugs.
that's a theme. Yeah, substance abuse. Yeah,
So he's
yeah.
getting the things that he wants, right? And he's getting the things
Mm-hmm.
that people crave. So talk
Right,
about the difficulty, because now people look at the original product, right? And then the transformation.
right.
But they don't
Sure,
talk about that process and how difficult it is, and especially, your ego gets built up and you kind of have to start breaking your
sure,
own ego down. So how was
sure.
that process like?
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, basically, I mean, he had everything. He looked around to his right and his left. He had money, he had fame, but inside he just wasn't. He wasn't right. He saw it in himself. He was just, just a walking ball of anger, always beating, people up. He wasn't like a bully, but he was always ready to fight. And it came to a point where the Outlaws were basically like, look, we can't even go out with this dude because he's just a nut. You know what I mean? We went outside to chill. We didn't come out. You know, we went to the club to chill. We didn't come to get in a fight.
Mm.
You know, so you know he was just and you know, this is also one of the segments of the audience that we target is other celebrities, because I'm positive that other celebrities have the same exact feeling where they're on top of the world, they have everything, but they don't feel complete. They don't feel whole. They feel, you know, they feel they may have emotional issues, and that's how he felt. He said basically, look, I have everything, but I don't I'm not, you know, I'm not right. So and it was his problem was he always dealt with things with anger and violence. And so basically, like I said, it came to a crossroads where, and drinking, you know, and so he was just drinking so much. Always, he said there's a 5 year period of his life where he doesn't remember, you know, and that's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah, he said there was a 5 year period where there's not one day he was sober. You
Mm.
know, and he would start drinking like an early afternoon and just be blasted by, you know, the evening. And you know, basically that it just came to a point where he himself said, I have to change. There was always this inner voice telling him, look, um, you know, there's something you have to do. And before it was rap, but then when Pac died and Gaddafi died, then that really wasn't a viable outlet. And then in terms of drugs and alcohol, I mean, you know, alcohol, you know, and also that just it wasn't viable. So he came to the point where he was literally almost about to kill his brother,
Mm.
and that was the point where it's like, no, look, yeah, that's crossed the line. That was a line that was crossed that, you know, it shouldn't have been crossed. You know, he was like, nah, this is getting a little too real. I'm gonna do something really that I'm gonna regret unless I do something positive in my life. If unless I find something in my life. And the thing is, he wasn't really necessarily looking for religion, but he was searching for something, you know. And it just so happened that he found purpose in religion.
But zoom in on, so now like he is where he is, but when you have that type of
Mm.
past, it's sometimes people fall back into their past
Yeah,
behaviors and whatnot. And
yeah,
you know, if somebody crosses you the wrong way, I could see someone like this just
right.
want punching somebody in the face. But
Sure,
what are the practical steps he takes? Because now we're talking about advice to other celebrities and a form of
sure,
mentorship. So what are some things that
sure.
he's able to implement, or what's the catalyst at this point? You know, you talked about the incident between his brother, but now what serves as a catalyst to just stay on this path?
I mean, basically, too, you know, it's really interesting, man, because, and again, we talk about this in the book. You know, I had to assume the position of a psychologist. I should have a degree in psychology now, just because of you know what I mean, just because of what I had to dissect and how I had to put his frame of mind and what he was going through. Um, you know, for him to lose his parents, you know, that was a major loss for him, and he was always searching for something that would, you know, as a human need, you need to be loved and cared for. You know what I mean, and that is from your mother and father. You know, first and foremost. Sure, he got it from his grandmas, you know, but there really wasn't that really, you know, nurturing environment that he grew up with. So fast forward, when he went to the masjid the first time, he went to the mosque. Um, the people were just so positive, man. You know, just smiling. He could not believe how many, you know, how genuine these people were, how they were smiling at him, shaking his hand. They were complete strangers, you know what I mean? And that really took him aback, and he was really, I guess, caught off guard because he had been used to such a cold, hard environment, and that's what he's grown up his whole life. So it was that warmth and acceptance, really, from Islam, you know, that really became the catalyst for him to be like, look, well, there is actually a safe place on earth where I can feel secure. I can be, you know, I can be accepted basically. And from that point on, his whole perspective on life changed. So he realized he didn't have to be, you know, a thug and a bully and things like that. And he knew that there were people out there that were genuine. And the more and more he learned about Islam, the more he you know, tried to assume the spirit of Islam. You know, the one thing I love about Mutah is that he's not he's the type of person that does everything 100. You know, if he's a gangster 100. He's a rapper 100. If he's Muslim 100. You know, there's a story in the book where we talk about basically Tupac was presented with the idea of being a Muslim gangster in a movie, and Tupac was like, "Nah, you either Muslim or you gangster, but you can't be both." You know what I
Mm.
mean? And that's the type of mentality Mutah has. So you know, he basically has really tried to turn his life around and really be as positive representative of Islam as possible. So it's just as extreme as he was with, you know, rap and being a thug and things like that. He's pretty serious. Him and his brother, they have nothing but respect, in the streets because they were serious. But just as committed as he was to that, he's just as committed to being a good Muslim.
So, what role do you think that the metaphysical plays in transformation? In terms of sometimes we're only looking within, or we think that we're in complete control of our own destinies, or this is the narrative that is sold to us, right? And to some part, we all have the means to work very hard and grind and try to achieve things. But what role does the metaphysical play in these transformations, in your opinion?
In terms of what?
Something beyond yourself. Sometimes even like when you look into all this stuff about mindfulness and giving gratitude, it's accepting that there's something larger than yourself out there, right? And that there's a presence or a force beyond you that sometimes is in control of things that you necessarily don't have control over. So I'm just saying, like, in terms of the drastic transformation that happened in his life, which is it's very unique, right? When you talk about
Hmm.
the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs, I think
Hmm.
that there's some metaphysical intervention going on.
Well, basically, I mean, yeah. Well, like I said, when he went to the mosque, that was the pinnacle of his life, because he went to the mosque, and okay, fine, from the physical, he has his interaction with the brothers and things like that, and that was just something that he had never experienced before. But also, when he was there, he made salat with the brothers. He made prayer. The guy Mikhail from that article, he's actually the one who brought him to the mosque and things like
Mm,
that. And he said when he made prayer, he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what to say, but basically he was just in prayer like everybody else. And then when he made prostration, he just felt like, it was him submitting to God and submitting in a way that uh, clearly showed that he was powerless, and he acknowledged at that point, look, I'm not in control of anything. I'm not,
mm.
my life is crazy. Um, I don't have all the answers, but uh, God does, and I submit myself and my life, to God. Spirituality was always a part of his life in some ways, because number one, his father was Muslim, and his mother was Muslim. His grandmother, though she didn't raise him up on a Islamic household, she was Christian, but she always talked about the presence of God and the importance of God in one's life and things like that. So um, but obviously when he got older, that really didn't play much of a role. But basically, it took that for him to realize, yes, there's something greater than me that I need to be in touch with, because otherwise, yeah, I don't have I can't do it by myself. Basically,
Mm.
I don't have the answers. And if it was left up to my own volition, then I would be either dead or in jail. And so, um, that was powerful enough for him to be like, look, this is, I submit myself to a higher being.
So I know you and I had a phone call maybe a month
Hmm.
ago, and we're talking about the book. And
Yeah,
at first glance, it looks like it's just a biography on the life of Mutah Beale. But then you talked about
sure.
some of the bigger benefits and the impact on society at large, the impact on research, university,
Yeah.
socioeconomics. So talk a little bit about the what tool the book can serve as when it comes to these different realms.
That's an excellent question, or way to move the interview, the direction in. Yeah, basically, like I said, I'm a researcher, man. So I'm looking at all different uh, ways that the book can be a one-stop shop for, to gather information, right? So that's the whole purpose of a researcher. Researcher, his or her job is to gather information and put it in one place. So when you read it, you don't have to go out and find all that stuff, right? So uh, when I was talking to Mutah in the beginning about how we're going to put this thing together, I said, look, there's a whole bunch of themes we need to talk about, and the things with mental health, police brutality, substance abuse, obviously religious and spiritual things, gang violence, because that's all throughout, that's all throughout the book, crime in general. And so basically, all of these different themes are throughout the book. And there wasn't any moment in his life except that I tried to say, okay, at this stage in his life, what else was going on that was influential or important, either historically or culturally or has something to do with the city. For instance, like when it was important for me to lay out for the reader how Irvington changed from the demography changed from being basically 70% white and 30% black to becoming the opposite. And because of that, that also happened at the same time that crack cocaine came in. So I have all these little statistics and all these other things. So basically the idea is that the book will serve as a history reference. For those interested in the history of certain things that were going on in that time frame. It'll also, we go into a lot of detail in terms of just the hip hop. We talk about what hip hop and rap, its inception in the 80s, how it transformed, how gangster rap came on the scene. And then it puts a square dead smack in the middle of the West Coast East Coast beef, which is one of the most riveting conflicts, really, and I'd say really in American history, and definitely in the Black American history, and definitely in hip hop culture. And the Tupac and Outlaws and Biggie, they were in the middle of it. So now we have a firsthand account of all that, that transpired. So that's also there in terms of just a historical reference for hip hop. And then all the people he's come across. I mean, as you talk about name dropping, I mean, everybody's in the book. Snoop, Suge, Dr. Dre, Dog Pound, Corrupt, Storm, Noble, everybody's there. So Steve Lobel, so it's just it's also it's also going to hopefully be a hip hop relic, that people can go to and check. And then also again, we talk about Bloods and Crips, because that was an integral part of him going out to California, and meeting Bone, who's also a well-known, Blood, who was in Training Day. I don't know if you know him. Yeah. So again, it's just and then also, for those people who are suffering and struggling just in day-to-day life, either mentally or they're in that environment where they're just surrounded by guns and death and drugs and stuff like that. It provides a roadmap for those types of people to actually make it out. And it's not something that's impossible. It is, you have a living example of somebody who turned his life around, and now he serves as an inspiration.
So
So all of those things all those things in the book. In terms of just real quick, the book draws on 125 sources. You're talking about books, interviews, newspaper articles, magazine articles, and there are about 240 references actually used from those 125 sources. So nobody can say that it's just my voice or my opinion or Mutah's voice. All that stuff can be cross-referenced. So that is what elevates it to the status of being able to be used in universities, and taught as a book. If you want to investigate, teach the life of Mutah, or teach, hip hop, class on hip hop or rap, or things like that.
that was actually my next question, and you answered it, which was like, what classes do you think it could serve under, and what university classes? So you gave a few examples.
Yeah, so I mean, there actually are classes right now that run at different universities on Pac and on Nas. I know that for a fact, and maybe even other celebrities, hip hop, major hip hop, probably on Biggie as well. But yeah, Mutah, his because he is so he was so close to Pac, his narrative and his perspective is very, very important, especially because, for instance, if a professor wanted to investigate, for instance, the East Coast West Coast beef, the book would be an excellent reference for that. If they wanted to look at gang violence, if they want to look at the influence of rap on black males, if they want to look at black males and gang violence, if they want to look at there's tons of different segments that they can that they can draw from in the book. And hopefully that is hopefully other professors will look at it and see that there's academic value in the book.
Based on your own experiences, your studies, and now your research for this publication, I'll ask you like a bit of a controversial question. It's not controversial, but some people find, so the topic that I keep hearing come up in different segments of society is that the situation of the African American community at large is like, when we look at gang violence, the crack epidemic and all this is like what their hands have wrought, or this is something they can easily pick themselves out of. But I think
Mm-hmm.
there's also another element at play in terms of um, kind of being put in a position where it's hard to pick yourself out of, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I have different segments of the community that I follow, and you find, okay, now we have a story of transformation happening, right? So
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going against all odds to
Mm-hmm.
transform and make it, but there's
Mm-hmm.
still a lot of pressure there and a lot of obstacles in your way that can lead to failure. Um,
Sure.
and some people may look at his story and say, well, if he made it, that there's no excuse for anybody else not to make it.
Right.
So how do you kind of dissect that?
I mean, yeah, that those arguments are always it's always it's controversial only in the fact that the people that make those arguments that say that, well, it's the American dream, you have all opportunities, those types of people, they also tend to forget the hundreds of years of history that are behind, you know, where, black people, or those communities, where they started. We can't forget that basically we started the race behind. We didn't start in front. We started behind, way behind. Um, and the family structure was one of the main things that was destroyed, for African Americans, from the days of slavery up until now. So, um, you know, uh, in Mutah's case, he had a stable family. He had a mother. He had a father. His father was paid up. His father was balling. And he bought his mother a house, which is Mutah's grandmother. He bought his own house. He had a number of different houses. He was involved in diamonds. God knows best where he would have been had his father been alive. You
Mm,
see, but because his father was murdered and his mother was murdered, right? There's no money now coming in like it was before, and then they're in an environment now. Crack cocaine comes into this neighborhood, and the neighborhood changes, but they don't have the funds to get out of the neighborhood. If his
right.
father was around, they would have probably moved. I'm pretty sure they would have moved to a much nicer place because his father had the cash, but he
Mm,
didn't. All the white people, they left.
mm,
And the black people basically stayed, and so we have a situation where now he becomes a prisoner of the environment. And so because he couldn't leave the environment now, and it's not like he was forced to sell crack. He'll be the first one to say, no, I wasn't forced to sell crack. It was just there was nothing else to do
mm,
at this age of 9 years old, 8 years old, 9 years, 10 years old. There's nothing else to do. So unfortunately, and then there's not really too much, what's the word, currency put on
mm,
education, in many places, in these types of communities. In some cases, some of the, maybe there might be currency put obviously from the parents and from older people who recognize they don't want their kids to fall into the same trap they did. But for some of the young black males, they just don't see it. Because when they look around, they see basketball player this, they see rapper this, they don't see, politician this or academic this or doctor this, Um, so yeah, so you have a lot of young black males that don't see any currency in education. So, and they have, aspirations, they want to have money, they want to, so a lot of times they just get caught up and they choose the fastest way, man. And then when they get caught up, it's not an easy thing to just get out. It's just
mm,
not. You just, in some cases the person just gets caught up with the lifestyle and they can't break that lifestyle. They don't want to break it. In some cases, they get a call with the power, because a lot of power that you have,
mm,
when you can tell people what to do and,
mm.
basically, commit violent acts and things like that. So yeah, so I mean, it's definitely doable, to get out of it, but it takes a lot of resolve from the person, and you can't. In order to do that, you have to have support. You have to have support network. Mutar had some of that, but again, a lot of that in his case was just personal resolve. So I would say that you know for people who are struggling, yeah, the struggle is real. And it's not like they can't get out of it. They definitely can, but there's a lot of things that have to be in place for them to do that, and sometimes those things just aren't there.
So what's Muta doing nowadays? I mean, you alluded to some of the stuff in the beginning in terms of the businesses and whatnot, but is he doing
Yeah,
any like speaking engagements and
yeah,
motivational
yeah, yep,
speaking?
yep. That's what he came here to Saudi as. He came primarily as a motivational speaker. So he's basically just telling the youth, man, like, look, you guys, I've been there, I've done that, I've done it all. I'm the realest of the real. And I left it because it just wasn't. It's just not. It's just not. There's nothing fulfilling there. Yeah, you might get some short term fame or some short term money or whatever. But ultimately, the way to go. And basically take my word for it. I was there, and I'm standing on the mountaintop, and it's just nothing. I'm not really seeing anything while I'm up here. So, he really finds, guidance and direction, just peace of life. Following the religion of Islam. So he, motivational speaking is his primary, um, job, but he also has, side businesses that he's involved with, restaurants, his own coffee shop, mashallah. We have a clothing line, 33. Get your t-shirts and get your
That's
jackets
right.
if you can.
Promo
Yeah,
code on the bottom.
yeah, so his father was an entrepreneur, and that entrepreneurial blood runs all throughout him. So he's not gonna stop. Him and his brother, they don't stop till the casket drops. So that's what it is.
I saw something interesting involving him, which is just interesting. That in the '90s, I was very young, but obviously, as young kids, we would talk about Tupac and Biggie and whatnot, and the East Coast versus West Coast, and we didn't understand it as very young kids, but you knew it was part of the media, it was part of the culture. So I saw a video with him and I guess somebody he tried to beat up back in the day, a former a rival member of another group or whatnot that was part of like Snoop Dogg's group or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many stories, man. He's got bro. There's so many stories we had to leave out of the book. The book is about 270 pages, man, and we didn't even get to him. We didn't get to his life in Saudi. We got to him getting up to the point of Saudi, and more than likely we'll make that another project. So I mean, there's tons of stories, bro. So I don't know which where did you read this or where did you see it?
This was a couple weeks ago, man. This was maybe on his IG page, and he was like ashamed. He was putting like all the emojis to show that he was like a knucklehead and whatnot, and basically he felt that somebody disrespected Tupac, so he went at that guy. And everyone came out of their respective studios. You had Snoop Dogg on one side, Tupac on one side. This is what I remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And then he was like, okay. He's like, you take him. I'm going to take those two.
Yeah, that was on his IG page. Yeah, that was on his IG. I forget exactly who the person was. No, it was the guy who just gave him a shahada, mashallah, and yeah. They they was about to come to blows and basically I mean that was Mutah's modus operandi. He just he's ready to just go to war, with anybody, and he earned a lot of respect for that because people were just like, dude, just don't mess with the dude because he's not going to take nothing from nobody, So that's where he gets the name Napoleon. That's why Pac named it to him because it was just fitting. He was just a general.
So what are I'm gonna give the couple final minutes and final word to you, but what is the next phase? What can you talk about in terms of what's the next steps with the book? When is the book planning on being released? Where do you plan on distributing it? And just whatever you want to close the show out with, I give you the final phrase.
Cool. Before we do that, I know you mentioned that you wanted to talk about the title, so I'll go into that real quick.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was talking to Mutah about his life, there was just so much in it that was, like I said, it's raw. It's just a raw, it's just raw, man. It's just it's like, man, subhanAllah, it's just such traumatic things that happened to him. And I said, would you mind if I made the title "Life Is Raw"? And he said, sure. But I said, look, I'm also, I'm an author and I'm a writer and I'm a creative, So I said, let's make the R backwards. Okay. And so this is a Russian R. So that's because your life is not, this whole book is not just about how raw your life is. It's also about your struggles. Right. And so really you can read it as life is raw, but if you read it backwards, it's life is war. You know what I mean? Because of how much this man had to struggle emotionally, psychologically, obviously physically, spiritually, he was struggling with himself. You know what I mean? So for many people, life is not, there's no peace in life. It's just a constant nonstop, never ending battle and a struggle. So that was the rationale behind making R backwards. And also it's just unique, So life is raw, but it's not just, it's not written that way. So you can read it the other way. Life is war, and you can also read, if you want to go like completely backwards, it could be war is life. Basically, like it's just a real struggle. And really, the only place that he was able to find peace, was in following the religion of Islam. And even then, his battles didn't stop. It stopped from being a physical battle, an emotional battle, and now it became a spiritual battle between
Mm.
himself, the good in himself and the evil in himself. So the life as a struggle never stops. You never stop until you die. Essentially, then that's when you, hopefully attain peace. Um, so that was the rationale behind that. And yeah, the book is finished. We're just polishing it up. We've already sent it out to a major publisher. We can't reveal who the publisher is, but a major publisher, and we're just waiting for feedback from them. It's been with them for about a month. We sent them the first few chapters. They loved it, and they said, send us the rest of the book. So now it's just in the review process, and hopefully we'll hear favorable news from them within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And then once they get back to us, then we'll have a rollout strategy of again what different platforms will be released. I'm almost certain that the ebook probably will be released first, because that's it's already in ebook form, so that would be the easiest way to disseminate, especially with COVID-19 and everybody's locked down and it's just
Mm.
difficult to navigate. Yeah, so yeah, it'll be probably available by ebook first, but yeah, we'll have ebooks, we'll have the print book, we'll have audiobooks, and like I said, hopefully we'll have some major news in terms of who is actually going to publish it. So yeah, so I kind of don't want to talk too much about that, but
No,
yeah,
no problem.
the release date is forthcoming,
Okay.
but
Okay.
sooner rather than later.
And what's your little last message to the audience in terms of transformation and life sometimes being war and war being life, and people right now, I think a lot of people are still people have been losing their jobs. I've created a few series online to help small business owners learn how to develop their websites and do different types of things. But right now people are struggling, people are at home, people are losing their jobs, people don't have access to
Yeah,
funds. So what
yeah,
last message do you have for them?
yeah. I mean, just never give up. Never give up. Um, you know, the human has the amazing ability to adapt.
Mm.
So there's no situation that we're presented with except that you can always turn something negative into positive. And um, there's you have to have the fortitude to basically say, okay, I'm not in control of the situation right now, but I'm in control of my reaction. I am in control of how I react to this. So if you fold, then that doesn't solve anything. So you have to just find other ways, to get by. And it's part of building character to have resolve in times of difficulty. you know this is in marriage, this is in friendships. I don't want to know how you are when everything is all good and hunky dory. I want to know how you are when crap hits the fan. You know what I mean? And then in these situations, you really can find out about yourself, who you are. And at the end of the day, too, you have to trust that bad situations never last forever. So there's going to be a way out. So you just have to be patient with the situation, try your best to navigate as much as you can, and tap into uh, tap into things in your personality, your talents. Try to utilize things that maybe you didn't think about before, and always be ready, always be prepared. These situations show us that we have to be. You can never expect life to be at one constant.
Mm.
In one day or two, your whole world can be flipped around. So you always need
Wow.
to have backup plans and contingency plans, because you just don't know what tomorrow brings. So that's one thing that this whole pandemic has showed me, is that I have to really have backup plans and things like that. Financially be more responsible, things like that. You just don't know. You know, just don't take life for granted.
So if people want to get updates on the book, or people want to see what you're doing, where can they follow you?
They can follow me at Sulaiman Jenkins. I don't know if you can put that up anywhere. Or yes, at Sulaiman Jenkins, for both Twitter as well as IG. For the book, if you want to follow updates, I'll have updates on my IG account as well. But the book has its own IG account. Life is Raw Outlaw. So LIFEISRAW, and then Outlaws. Life is Raw Outlaw, and we'll definitely have updates there, and we have excerpts that we put on that website. And then obviously you can follow Mutah Beale um, at his on his Twitter and IG handles.
So, Sulaiman.
MAN. Yep, and then Jenkins, Jenkins.
And then you said Life is Raw Outlaw.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, if there's something wrong here, you can update it. It's no problem. So guys, the book, one more time, gonna be coming out soon, is Life is Raw, a story about a reformed outlaw, told by Mutah Beale, written by my dear friend Sulaiman Jenkins, published, an author, a teacher, an educator, inspiration, and I'm sure the community is very proud of you, your local community in Brooklyn, from Brooklyn, right?
Also, it's definitely big up to Brooklyn. Shout out, yeah. BK in the veins, man.
So next time we have you on here, we'll talk about New York versus Chicago. We can do a little bit of that.
No problem. No problem. No problem. Even though, to be perfectly honest, I was a Bulls fan, so I love Jordan, so I was rocking with Jordan. But yeah, we could talk about.
We got to get you on one of these basketball podcasts, man. We've been
that'd be lovely, man. That'd be lovely, man.
Having fun with Coach D and this
That's
Jordan. This Last Dance documentary has been nice. It had a nice little highlight of the New York Knicks. So
yeah, it's been amazing. And then also, if you want to have Mutah on the show, hopefully we can arrange that as well.
Let's do it. Let's have a follow up and let's discuss some incidents that you guys can discuss without going too much into the book. Sure. And then we go from there, my friend.
Sounds good, man.
Pleasure to have you on here. Thank you for giving us from your time. Thank you so much, brother.
Have
have a good one.
Take care, man.
You too, brother.
All right, take care. So.